Connect. All right, go for it.
All right, a little Phil Collins on the background for everybody to wake up to Susu Studio today, Nathan. Here we are. It doesn't seem like it's real, but we're at Iron Bowl. This season has kind of flown by. Opportunity is the word of the day for me. This is an opportunity game for Auburn. When you look at offense, defense, special teams, knowing what you're up against, this is an Alabama team that has some holes. Can Auburn take advantage of them? That's where this game lies for me.
Yeah, I think Alabama, when you look this season, they haven't been, they're a top 3-4 team. I mean, they're obviously primed to head toward the college football playoff right now, and they're a great team, but they haven't been in every phase of the game the kind of world-beating team that we're used to seeing. They've played 3 really close games this season, then obviously they lost to Texas A&M, and 2 of those close games were against LSU and Arkansas, both teams that Auburn was able to beat on the road. So if you're an Auburn fan looking for, some optimism here, that's where it lies. Alabama has not played a perfect game very often this season. Some of the things that Alabama does do well, passing the ball, getting after the quarterback on the defensive side of the ball. Will Anderson's one of the best defensive players in the country. Those are things you're concerned about if you're Auburn, because those have been weaknesses over the past few weeks. But yeah, I think this is really going to be telling of this coaching staff and of the kind of coach that Brian Harsin is and what he can kind of get out of these players, because when you're playing for pride at this point in the season, it really kind of matters whether you go out and you just sort of lay an egg and you just lay down and the other team is obviously the better team. But we've seen Auburn in these kind of games before, in these Iron Bowls, particularly at home, come out with a really good 2009. 2015, they played them close with a really undermatched team. So I don't think it'd be a surprise many people if Auburn kept this thing close. That's just kind of how it tends to go in Jordan Hare Stadium.
Yeah, I think is the key. I think early on is really important. Yeah. Can you run the football? Can you slow down the running game? Those are 2 things. I mean, you look at the way LSU played Alabama a few weeks ago. To me, that's the blueprint for what Auburn needs to do. LSU, a team that kind of been decimated by some injuries, players not playing anymore. That wasn't the LSU team that Auburn faced, a couple months ago. But they kept it close by controlling the football, running the football, stopping the run. Make Bryce Young one-dimensional. That, to me, is a big deal today. So can Auburn do that? Can you execute that? A lot of Tank Bigsby, a lot of Jarquez Hunter, lean on that offensive line. And then, hey, TJ Finley, 1 start under his belt. We've seen him. He's had some games in his past and situations in his past where he's thrown the ball well. Nathan, TJ Finley needs to play off the charts today.
Yep.
Alabama's given up some plays in the passing game. Can Auburn take advantage of those? But it all starts with being able to run the football, avoiding 3rd and long. If you look up today and Auburn's in 3rd and 8 or 9 a bunch, that's not a great situation for Auburn to be in.
Yeah, you definitely don't want Alabama to tee off in those kind of situations with a guy like Will Anderson. Yeah, I didn't think the game plan for TJ Finley was too bad last week. It was just kind of the execution of it. So I feel like that's the offensive blueprint you're going to want if you're Auburn in this game. Look, if you play the way on offense you did last week, just in terms of some of the metrics, you send Tank Bigsby out there and he's got over 150 yards. Look, the only teams that have come close to 100 yards rushing against Alabama this season have been Texas A&M, they got a win, and then the 3 other teams that have gone over 100 were those teams, Florida, LSU, and Arkansas.
Correct.
So if you're able to establish that, like Jason was saying, you're kind of able to control the game on offense, that's going to put your backup quarterback in a much better situation. We'll see if Kobe Hudson's able to come back in this game. Auburn maybe get some help in the receiving core, but again, going back to last week, you're going to want to establish that again with Tank Bigsby, set him up on the ground and allow some easier throws for TJ Finley. I thought last week maybe there were a little bit too many, trying to make it happen with Finley's arm when you kind of knew at the beginning of the game he was going to be a good, not great passer. But we've seen him in these, in a situation earlier this season. Obviously, it was Georgia State and not Alabama, but he's got that moxie to him, and he's definitely a really confident quarterback. And look, Philip wrote about it this week. Unlikely heroes are born in this game. Sometimes people come out and they make a name for themselves in the Iron Bowl, and so I think Finley has an opportunity to do that. Back on the other side, Alabama's offensive line has been really porous this season. They have had a lot of inconsistencies, almost twice as many sacks allowed on the year as Auburn has allowed.
Yes.
So if a guy like Eku Leota, we've seen him play really strong. Derek Hall's had a pretty good season for the most part. If TD Moultrie has a good game today,
that's
if you're able to get those guys going, you almost feel like, talking about Auburn getting in the 3rd and longs, if you put Alabama in the 3rd and longs, they're a more explosive offense, they're a more efficient offense, but you're going to give yourself a better chance to get off the field if those guys are playing well today.
Here's my guy on offense, Sean Chivers.
Sure.
The less you dance against Alabama, the better. Sean Chivers is not a dancer. He is a one-cut, get downhill. We've seen him have a long touchdown run called back because of a penalty against Alabama. Saw him a couple of years ago make big plays. We've seen him in the passing game. Sean Shivers today on third downs. To me, if you're third and long today, if you're Auburn, your best chance is going to be to get the ball to Sean Shivers' hands, get him downhill and see what happens. So Sean Shivers more involved, some draws on third down, some of those things. To me, that could be a guy that could make a big impact.
Yeah, you're going to need your secondary to play well too, just because you look back at the past couple games, and even when Auburn has been able to get a pass rush, these quarterbacks the past couple games, obviously you're buoyed by a great performance by Will Rogers, but even Jason Brown for South Carolina, they were leaning on their run game, but he was kind of able to get what he wanted. Quarterbacks in the past 2 games, 89% of their passes with 9 touchdown passes. That's not necessarily a statistic that bodes well when you look at what Bryce Young did last week with 559 passing yards for Alabama, but guys like Roger McCreary, that's going to be a great matchup with him and Jamison Williams. And guys on the back end have got to play well too. Smoke Monday's got to cover well, and they've got to make tackles at the line of scrimmage, because you know what happens with Alabama in the RPO game. They're going to take
that is my key for the secondary. It's getting guys on the ground. Make tackles, much like you play against Ole Miss, where you're going, hey, look, make that be a 5-yard gain instead of a 25 or a 55-yard gain. That's where Alabama beats you. That's where they kill you. Get guys on the ground, tackle well. But you're right, safeties, Smoke Monday, those guys on the back end, they got to do really well, because they're going to get matched up. Bill O'Brien's an NFL guy. He's going to look for the matchup. Can Auburn avoid some of those where you get Smoke Monday on a John Mechie or somebody? That's the things that you can't have today if you're Auburn. It's more about alignment, assignment maybe than execution sometimes. Do we see more Roe Torrance? Do we see Nehemiah Pritchett back in the nickel? I think we could see some of those things today, get more coverage on the field.
Yeah, over the past few weeks, whether it's been Zion Puckett, I thought was a little bit better. We'll see if he comes back today. But people just kind of picking on a Bidarius Knight, picking on a Donovan Kaufman. Even Nehemiah Pritchett has had his struggles the past few games. That's not something you want to see today if you're Auburn. Jason, just your overall impression of how you think this one might play out, not a score prediction or anything like that, and just kind of your number one key on both sides of the ball for Auburn in order to keep this one, like you said, just make it a 4-quarter game and see what happens.
Number one key for me, offensively and defensively, is Auburn's ability to run the football, because that works defensively as well. So can you run the football? Can you control the line of scrimmage? And can you kind of work some clock? Because I think you need to shorten the game as much as possible today. The more possessions you give Alabama, the more chances they have for a big play. So for me, it all hinges on Auburn's ability to run the football today. Yeah, I think line of scrimmage on both sides, that's a really easy thing to say, but in this game, I mean, if you're able to protect a guy like TJ Finley, let him build a little bit of confidence, if you're able to make some holes for Tank Bigsby, which they did a good job of in the past couple games, and then on the opposite side, guys like we talked about, Eku Leota, I think if he has a big game today, maybe a sack and a half, something like that, Derek Hall's able to get in the backfield. I really just think it goes back to game control. I think if you can kind of just keep this a 1-score, 7 points, 10-point game, just hang around until the fourth quarter, try to create a couple turnovers for yourself maybe over the course of the game. If Auburn loses the turnover battle, that's tough. You're probably in a really bad spot here. But we've seen it. I thought you brought up a good point earlier. Smoke Monday was a guy you mentioned. He's made a big play in this game. Sean Shivers has made a big play in this game. This is a veteran Auburn team in this sense. They've made big plays in the Iron Bowl before. And so I think that's something you can hang your hat on if you're Auburn. You can look at those guys and say, you look at the rest of the locker room and say, look, we're not scared of Alabama. That's something Gus Malzahn definitely established before Brian Harsin got here. So a lot of the players on this team definitely not scared of Bama. They've beaten Bama in this building 2 times in a row. So obviously that's what they're going to go try to do out there today. So thank you guys so much for listening to the pregame Blitz here inside Jordan-Hare Stadium. We'll have all kinds of coverage for you guys at auburnundercover.com inside the Auburn Tigers. For Jason Caldwell, I'm Nathan King. You guys enjoy the game. We'll see you on Facebook Live at halftime.